This is Anna Patterson with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins-Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a great week so far and that you are staying warm in the impending, possible, maybe snowmageddon that we may or may not be receiving tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with organizational updates. Again, just want you all to save the date for our fall conference. The 2025 North Carolina Affordable Housing Conference is happening in September, on September 30th through October 1st at the Raleigh Convention Center. We host this conference in conjunction with the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency and Centric Community Capital, two wonderful partners. And so we hope that you are able to come for the conference. It is a wonderful opportunity for networking, but also to hear from really insightful speakers, really relevant speakers, timely ones, and breakout sessions that benefit a wide variety of the areas in our field. Moving right along to federal and national updates. Many of you have heard or have seen us send out several calls to action. The first being that we would like for folks to sign on to a letter that we will be sending to our congressional delegation this week after the Trump administration's recent attempt to freeze all federal grants, which is still on hold at the moment. Freezing all federal grants, loans, and financial assistance programs, we really want to emphasize the importance of federal housing funds and how at risk they are. The administration, if they do not try again to halt the distribution of the previously appropriated funds, we do expect there to be some drastic budget cuts once the continuing resolution ends in March. But March 14th is that deadline. Our North Carolina senators and congresspeople just need to be reminded and need to know that our state relies on these federal housing funds and these federal funds to create and sustain affordable, thriving communities. So the loss of these funds will mean drastic increases in eviction and homelessness in North Carolina and could stall Hurricane Helene recovery even further. So really, it's been really amazing to see that we have over 360 signatures from people and organizations across the state. And it's important to note that we now have signatures from an individual, organization, or community group in all 100 counties in North Carolina. I think this is a real testament to how widespread this impact would be and how serious this risk of federal funds and federal resources being halted, how much it would impact our state. If you are on the fence about signing or you're getting ready to sign, please make sure that you do so by tomorrow, close of business. So tomorrow, Wednesday, February 19th, we will be closing off the letter, and we will be sending the letter on to the congressional delegation. So we'll be updating our letter, putting all the signatures, all the names. There are a lot of people that submitted names in solidarity as well, so I just want to honor those folks. So we actually had about 401 submissions, and 362 of those have agreed to have their name or their organization's name placed on the letter. So I wanted to shout out all 401 folks that have submitted their name or the name of their organization. It's really, really evident that this matters to a lot of people, and we want to continue to show how much that matters to our entire state, because our literal entire state, people from all across the state have responded. So we will have a link to the letter in the call notes for you to view and see what the letter says and see if you're comfortable signing it on behalf of your organization or on behalf of yourself. And if you have any questions about participating, you can actually contact policy@nchousing.org, and we'll have that email address in the call notes as well. Again, please try and sign on by tomorrow, close of business. We'll be sending the letter to our congressional delegation on Thursday. Moving on to state and local updates. In the General Assembly, so we're watching a few meetings this week, but there have been some adjustments due to weather. Yesterday, I was at the House Rules, Calendar, and Operations Committee meeting, and they discussed or heard House Bill 47, which is Disaster Recovery Act of 2025, Part 1. There were no additional amendments that were made at that meeting, but it does seem like there is going to be a chair amendment introduced on the floor when the bill is heard. So no changes other than the additional kind of separate allocations that were made, like specific allocations that were made to the bill, just to review what those are. So in the initial bill, it just mentioned that there'd be $275 million transferred to the Helene Fund for a total of $500 million, and then the bill went on to allocate that $500 million. Last week, and this week it still currently stands the same, $10 million of those dollars. These are some of the changes that were added, so this isn't the entirety of it. $10 million to the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services Division of Social Services to supplement rental assistance payments. This is huge. So far, only $1 million has been given towards rental assistance. We are also seeing $75 million for payments to farmers who lost crops, livestock and infrastructure, $55 million for local government grants to expedite infrastructure repairs affecting business operation and patronage, $5 million for tourism marketing, and then also some additional allowances, like allowing the state to loan out surplus heavy machinery and vehicles to volunteer groups. And then it actually allows the Department of Corrections to have inmates pick up debris on affected public roads. So these are just a few of the changes. We did sign on to a letter asking for some additional information and transparency around the development of the bill, some additional funding for housing counseling to go along with the bill, protection for legal services, and as well as opportunities for more public engagement, particularly by those impacted by the storm in Western North Carolina. So more to come on that. In a report recently released by the Office of State Budget and Management, according to most recent census updates, the North Carolina population is actually projected to reach 11.7 million people by 2030. And if this projection would hold true, then that means there will be an anticipated population growth of 1.2 million residents between 2020 and 2030, which would be enough for North Carolina to gain an additional congressional seat following the 2030 census. So this means that North Carolina would also outpace Georgia and Ohio and would become the seventh most populous state. Currently, we are ninth. In local news and updates, a lot of local governments are working on launching their affordable housing funds or announcing plans to increase their housing stock. Last week, the city of Greensboro announced plans to build 10,000 homes by 2030, and that 10,000 homes would actually only represent 1/3 of the homes needed to meet the region's projected demand. In town of Chapel Hill, they announced the launch of their $20 million Affordable Housing Loan Fund in partnership with UNC Health and the Self-Help Ventures Fund. In 2023, they actually launched this. The town and UNC Health committed a total of $5.7 million in seed funding, and then through the leveraging of investments, they've been able to attract additional funding. There will be two types of loans available through the fund: loans for preservation or loans for the creation of affordable housing. Moving on to events, there's a few events that I want to list up for you. On February 25th, there will be a webinar hosted by Enterprise Community Partners talking about Year 15 for low-income housing tax credit properties and some of the strategies for those expiring LIHTC properties and transitioning. There also is going to be a Piedmont Triad Regional Housing Summit on February 27th from 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at the Benton Convention Center. You can register using the link in our call notes. We also want to list up that there's another webinar hosted by the National League of Cities and Turner Labs talking about the housing movement and innovations for a better future. And it's going to talk about several different things. It's particularly looking at the intersection of housing, community development, finance, and the correlation between this quality of life, housing, and wealth, and developing strong and stable homes. We are anticipating there to be also a High Point NAACP homeownership fair on February 27th. So if you're in the High Point area, the YWCA in High Point is hosting a homeownership fair that is hosted by the High Point NAACP. And then, of course, we want to make sure that you all remember that our North Carolina Housing Day 2025 that we are hosting in conjunction with Habitat for Humanity of North Carolina and the North Carolina Coalition and Homelessness. Registration is now open for that. So Wednesday, April 9th, at the North Carolina General Assembly, opportunity to meet with your elected officials and emphasize why housing matters to you and why housing matters to North Carolina. So we really want a big showing that day, and we really encourage folks from all across the state to come. So the registration link and additional details are available in the call notes for that as well. I want to also lift up some recent reports. We talked about this briefly last week, but we're still digging into this report a little bit, but there's been a great analysis released by the North Carolina Chamber Foundation looking at the housing supply gap and doing an analysis of that supply gap and the economic impact of that supply gap. And so I think this is a really good representation, once more, of how housing is not a siloed issue. And so we have an entity, an organization that is really concerned about workforce and small businesses and medium businesses and large businesses, and how the economy and the resiliency of North Carolina is truly impacted by housing, and how these two issues are inextricably linked. Another interesting report that I'd love to lift up, our partners at the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency just released a piece looking at a new survey from Western North Carolina showing the region's persistent housing stability and affordability challenges. So make sure to check that out. And then the UNC School of Government just released a piece talking about allocating community development block grant disaster recovery funds, and a review of local government and citizen participation and why that's encouraged, and oftentimes with these federal funds required. There's a lot of other links and resources here in the call notes for you. If you're ever looking for these call notes, make sure you go to our website and look for our podcast, and all the call notes with all the links that we reference will be there. And that also includes our bill tracker for North Carolina General Assembly for that legislation, as we're looking through that as well. Another reminder, just want to make sure before we hop off, the deadline to sign on to the letter to protect federal resources is tomorrow, Wednesday, February 19th, close of business. Thank you to all 401 folks who have already signed on. It's been amazing to see that support and that interest pour in. So again, if you haven't yet done so, make sure that you sign on for your organization or for you yourself as an individual, and we will talk to you next time.